Welcome to Sympiphany, a Baltimore Symphony Orchestra podcast. I'm Jennifer Barton, Senior Vice President and Chief Revenue Strategy Officer at the BSO. In my role, I get to hear the stories and ideas from our musicians and audiences about how music shapes their lives, and it's too good to keep to myself. So today, I'm excited to share with you a very fun conversation that I had with Aubrey Foard, Principal Tuba of the Baltimore Symphony. He really wanted to share a story about the lore of Symphonie fantastique, which is wild in and of itself, but then also Hector Berlioz's real romantic adventures, if you can call them that, and how they related to and inspired this incredible piece of music. We also talked about the way that you pick up these famous stories that flow through history by having a lifetime of travel and interactions with different orchestras and musicians. And Aubrey's definitely somebody who can give us a great worldview around all of that life of a musician. First, though, we invited you to answer this episode's question: what is your favorite piece of musical lore? And we heard from Trey Burke, a member of the BSO's team, who said, Mozart wrote his clarinet concerto for his buddy Anton Stadler, who then lost the manuscript. Historians suspect, though, that he pawned it. The world's most elegant case of, bro, I swear I'll get it back. Thank you, Trey, for sharing, and stay tuned until the end of this episode for our next question that I hope you'll respond to. And now, I hope you enjoy my chat with Aubrey. Today, I'm so pleased to welcome Aubrey Foard, the Principal Tuba of the BSO since 2018. When he's not with the BSO, he's teaching regularly at UCLA, yes, in California, and he is artist faculty at Brevard Music Center during the summer. He's an avid runner, whiskey enthusiast, and travel aficionado. So welcome, Aubrey.
Thank you. I am actually very excited to be here.
Yes. Well, and this is a perfect way to kick off the podcast because we are really trying to get storytelling, happening here. And I feel like every time I talk to you, there is some kind of random story that comes up from the past or just the orchestra world. And we were just recently talking about the lore around Symphonie fantastique. And so I thought this is a perfect relation to the question we've asked everybody to share this week, which is, what is your favorite piece of musical lore? So tell us about this story that you wanted to share.
Yeah, well, first of all, there's the story that most people know, which is that Symphonie fantastique essentially is a piece of programmatic music, right? The music tells a story. So in the first movement, here is young Hector Berlioz. He's 26, and he's fallen in love with a woman. He is sort of the hero of this piece. And in the first movement, he sees a woman who he is instantly attracted to. And he feels all of these flutters and all of this nervousness and anxiety about trying to go up to speak to her. And meanwhile, her theme, which is called the Idée fixe, it runs throughout the piece. It goes da 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 ya dee da. He hears that as he's trying to find her, as he's trying to get close to her, but all of his anxieties and all of his passions sort of prevent him from actually going up to talk to her. Then in the second movement, there's a waltz, and he sees her at a waltz. And again, she's just sort of always out of reach. He's actually ready to go and talk to her now, but she is not quite within any sort of range that he can actually go and speak to her. Then in the third movement, he has dreamed that he has killed her. And so being very depressed, he takes opium, and you can hear the thunder in the orchestra. There's a shepherd's call played by the English horn and the principal oboist off stage. And then towards the end of the movement, he's taken his opium. He's very depressed. He falls into a depressed sort of sleep as thunder beckons in the distance with two sets of timpani. Then the fourth movement...
It's getting there.
Yeah. Then the fourth movement, having killed his lover, he dreams that he has been put on trial and he's being led to the scaffold where the guillotine is. And so all of the townspeople have gathered and they're pelting him with all kinds of produce and rotten eggs and stuff. And he feels this feeling of her one last time, even though she's dead. There's still just a slight recall of her theme. And then the guillotine comes down and his head bounces down the steps. And then the fifth movement, the final movement, he dreams that he's in hell and he's surrounded by witches and goblins and demons and devils. And they are all celebrating, torturing him. It's just, when you hear about it in music history, you're like, oh, wow. But when you actually start to talk about it in a casual conversation, it's just like, oh, my God, this is totally bananas. It's totally nutso.
Right.
And it's so fun to talk about because it's so crazy. Nobody up until this point had written anything this ridiculous, with this much of a ridiculous backstory. In any musical history. I mean, there's a lot of fantastical elements in Orpheus in the Underworld. There's a lot of gods and mythos in a lot of the operas leading up to this point, but there is nothing like a real person imagining that he's fallen in love with and is basically trying to follow around this woman.
Right. So this point in history, what time period are we talking about here? Because I feel like that's an important part of the romanticism of all of this.
Yeah, 1826. So, it's right at the beginning of the Romantic era, and people are just really in touch with their feelings, man. And boy, is Berlioz sort of the epitome of that. He is just really all over it. And for better or worse, it comes through in that music.
So people love to talk about this. And I feel like every time an orchestra plays it, we all revisit it and more storytelling gets stacked on top of it and people's understanding of it and their re-listening of it evolves. So how was this based on real life?
Yeah.
Or not? I mean, yeah, that's the part that was new this time around from our conversation.
Right.
And I was like, how wild, it being 1826, what was going on in the world. I'm trying to think about what was going on in Paris where he was when he wrote this, right?
Yeah.
What was life like then? But I mean, I just think of this kind of macabre side of everything. What inspired him to write this?
Yeah, so I'm not a historian, so I can't really talk a lot about what happened in Paris at that time. But what happened with Berlioz is that he went to go see Hamlet. And there was, at the time, a famous actress playing Ophelia in Hamlet. Her name was Harriet Smithson. She's from Ireland. And so young Berlioz, this basically kid, he's 25, 26. He sees a performance and he's instantly obsessed with her. And by the way, modern day, if this had happened, Berlioz would have been canceled in a heartbeat. He would have been, he would have been a social pariah within a week. But this being early 19th century Paris, it seemed like it might have been a common occurrence for this sort of thing to happen.
Yeah, the timing matters.
Oh my God. And wow, there is so much cancelable material in here.
Yikes.
So he stalks her, right? He's always around. He's writing her letters constantly. He's always physically present near her. He moves into an apartment near hers so he could watch her come and go. And then at one point,
realize this was so.
Oh, dude. And then at one point, he shows up on her doorstep and he's having a literal fit. He cannot actually form words because he can't control his emotions. He's so just completely over the top that he cannot form words. He just collapses at her door. And so now she's got to deal with him. Here's the other thing, though. Berlioz didn't speak English. And remember, Harriet's from Ireland. And she, having just moved to Paris, she doesn't speak nearly a word of French. So he's trying to profess his love to her in French. She doesn't understand this guy. This creepy Frenchman following her around, stalking her, and she doesn't understand him, nor is she able to communicate back to him this is not cool, bro.
Yeah.
So anyway, it doesn't stop him. And later in that decade, he programs the premiere of Symphonie Fantastique during a day that he knows Harriet is in town, but free from her acting commitments.
Oh my gosh.
So the big day comes, and of course, she doesn't show up. So, okay, it feels like it's not going to work out, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There's more to this story.
There's more to
She
this
doesn't
story.
show. Okay.
She doesn't show. So then he gets engaged to a French woman named, here we go, Marie Félicité Denise Mock. And pretty soon after that, and it's a happy engagement. He's into it. She's into it. Her mom's into it. But pretty soon after that, he goes off to study for 2 years in Italy. And within 3 weeks of him arriving in Italy, she breaks it off. So she actually has a new suitor. And he is enraged by this. He is so mad. So he actually plots to kill them, to go back to Paris and murder them.
Oh my gosh.
And he goes so far as to purchase poisons, pistols, and my favorite part, an elaborate disguise. So, and then starts traveling back to France with the intention of murdering them. But luckily for everyone, he changes his mind by the time he gets to Nice and heads back to Italy to finish his studies. So he
Okay. All right. This is a great story.
So then he goes back to Paris after a couple years. It's 1830 now. And he invites Harriet to the premiere of the sequel to Symphonie Fantastique. Now, remember, he wrote Symphonie Fantastique about her. So now he's written another piece about her. Yeah.
Really?
Crazy Stalker Man has written another piece about her. And the ending of this story is really just indicative of the times, right? Because now she shows up. She shows up to the sequel to this piece. It's called Lelio. And she actually decides, after all of this, after the whole stalking, after showing up on our doorstep, incommunicative, after all of this, she's like, you know what? Actually, I'm kind of into this dude. He wrote this big stalkery piece about me, and then he wrote another big stalkery piece about me. And actually, you know what? Let's go for it.
Jeez.
So
I did not know it was going to go in that direction.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That's really disturbing.
1820s and 1830s, man. So they become lovers, and then they later get married, and she actually bears him one child. It's initially a happy relationship, but Harriet is no longer the major actress that she was. And meanwhile, Berlioz's career is just getting ever greater and bigger, and she actually starts to become envious him. So this results in a divorce. And unfortunately for Harriet, about 5 years after that, she started getting seizures, which resulted in her becoming paralyzed, seizures and actually several strokes. To Berlioz's credit, he does financially support her. He does visit her. You know, even though they're divorced, in spite of everything, they still think fondly of each other. She dies about 5 years after that. So it's a tragic story of her, even though it's a wild story that we love to talk about. In a way, she was kind of a victim. Well, and certainly by modern standards, she was a victim of his stalking. Not kind of, but actually a victim. But she was still a very, very important part of Berlioz's life. And we wouldn't have this incredible music without her being part of that life.
Wow. That's a lot.
It's a ride.
I mean, so in the middle of this storytelling, you are saying that you're not a historian. You've cobbled this together because you've probably played this piece how many times? I mean, at least a dozen. I'm going to get, 2 dozen. And so people just kind of piece these pieces together. I mean, we don't know I'm sure that you know what you're talking about, but we don't know how true some of these things are. Like, we don't know how over exaggerated they are or under exaggerated, like the level of creepiness that exists. And I feel like this is the storytelling that's so juicy, and it's just this piece. There's so much more that you could get into about all the different pieces that exist. Some are more juicy than others, especially given some of the composer's lifestyles. But you've gone through playing this piece, picking this up, contributing to the lore, and here you are sharing it with others to influence their listening if that's what they like when it comes time to hear the BSO play this at the end of October. But tell us a little bit, like, shift gears to how do you go about picking up all of these stories and anecdotes that provide this kind of rich behind the scenes, information that gets passed around. Because this is a symphony thing, like we were having a conversation about people at the symphony and experiences that we've had on stage. We were talking about people who had life and death events at the symphony. It's just a part of when there's humanity gathering together, some of the storytelling around that. So at this point, you're well-traveled. You travel to California every week. Your connection in the industry of musicians and historians is pretty substantial. Tell us a little bit about just your life and how you've gone about collecting stories like this.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I was in college, I went to Cleveland Institute of Music. I had some really great music history teachers. So you learn about these pieces and sort of the history behind them just right from the jump in college. So it sort of becomes up to you to learn more about it. One thing that was really helpful is that when I was growing up, so I'm 43, so I grew up in the 90s, and we had CDs that you would just go to Barnes and Noble and buy. They had a nice classical section. You would, a couple shelves of classical music. You'd buy the piece and then you'd read the liner notes. So you always had like program notes about the piece, and then you would learn more about the pieces anytime you played it if you read the program for whichever orchestra you were playing with. Or if you went to go hear an orchestra play it live, you would read the program notes. And so all these program notes sort of provide different little details, because generally program notes are no more than, let's say, 10 paragraphs for a longer symphony like Symphonie fantastique. So you can only put in so much detail. So then if you want to like learn the whole backstory, like I've related today, then you go and you actually do a little bit of research. You really dig into it. Now, a lot of this is verifiable because of the letters. So much of music history is verifiable because of letters that were written between people. So a lot of what happened with Berlioz, I mentioned earlier, was that he was writing constantly to Harriet. And I think that she did write him back now and then. I doubt it was the volume at which he wrote to her. Again, I'm not a historian, so I'd have to do more research just to really bring all these little detailed facts into this story. Now, of course, letters at the end of the day, they're hearsay. You can write to somebody that you did something, and it doesn't actually mean that you did it. So, nothing is 100% certain to be fact. But God, what a wild story.
Yes, I'm gonna be looking for some stories that have a little bit more positive. I'm looking for like fair treatment of women. No, but it's you can find all kinds of stuff out there. Also, bring back letter writing. Yeah.
Well, letter writing is great. I mean, one of the best things about classical music, in my opinion, is that there are so many salacious stories behind so much of the music, and it makes it endlessly interesting. But also, it's a lot of fun to share with people because they don't necessarily otherwise know that. And some of it is sort of sinister, like this, or not just sort of, but actually moderately sinister, like this story. But there are other stories that are kind of wonderful. There's a story of how Brahms was sort of, it's hard to verify based on the letters, but Brahms was essentially could be understood as being in love with Clara Schumann, who was Robert Schumann's widow. And it was a very sort of, happy and affectionate friendship that may have, we don't know for sure because they lived together for a couple of years, but it may have developed into love. But regardless, it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story of friendship and endearing sort of, people exposing their humanity to each other.
I've heard a little bit about that one. And I think that we've heard pieces that they encouraged each other, to write. As a pianist, I've definitely heard some of those pieces. So we love love stories too in music. So tell us a little bit about the places that you've traveled. You started your career at Cleveland Institute, but I think it's kind of amazing the different places that musicians have gone to on the way to landing a big job like what you have with the BSO. So what was life like before being here, being full-time with us? sure that there was a lot of traveling involved.
Totally. Yeah. So like a lot of musicians, I've lived in a lot of places. Now in my 8th year in Baltimore, that's a long time for me to have lived anywhere, at least compared to my past. I grew up in Milwaukee, and I actually started university at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, UWM. And I studied there for 2 years. At the time, my teacher was the guy who now plays in the New York Philharmonic. His name's Alan Baer. So he won the New York Philharmonic job shortly after I left. So then I transferred to the Cleveland Institute of Music, where I studied with Ron Bishop, who was principal tubist in the Cleveland Orchestra. And then I got my master's at Rice University, studied with Dave Kirk in the Houston Symphony. And then I went to LA. They had just started opening up the Colburn School to a full orchestral program. So I was the first of 2 tuba players to go to school there. First tuba player to graduate from the Colburn School, which was great. Then I tried to freelance for a couple years in LA. I was terrible at it, but I was still taking auditions, and I worked really hard to just get a really good product for auditions together so that I could go and, start to win them. And before I got a full-time job, I was playing in several regional orchestras. I played in the Albany Symphony. I played in the Santa Barbara Symphony. I played in the West Virginia Symphony for a number of years. And I played a lot in the San Diego Symphony, which is not a regional orchestra. It's a full-time orchestra. I would play with them during the summer for 3 years. But eventually, after taking a whole bunch of auditions, I won my first sort of full-time-ish job in Charlotte, and I moved there, and that was the beginning of a new adventure for me. Playing full-time in an orchestra was always my dream, and after 6 years there, I won the job here in Baltimore, which is, a much higher level orchestra, both financially and musically.
Wonderful. Yeah, and we're lucky to have you. Did I hear you say Albany and Santa Barbara and another location? Like, you're at literally every corner of the country.
Well, so there was some overlap. I played in Albany from 2005 to 2009. I played in West Virginia from 2007 to 2012.
Yeah.
And I
played Warriors.
I played in Santa Barbara from 2010 to 2017. When I was playing in Santa Barbara the first couple of years, I was living in LA, so that made a lot of sense. And then for a while, my then girlfriend, now wife, Emily, lived in LA. So I would go out to LA, and that's around the time where I started teaching at UCLA as well. So I would go out to LA, I'd teach at school, I'd see her, and then I'd drive up to Santa Barbara for the rest of the week and play in the symphony there. It was a lot of fun. It's just really nice to be driving up the PCH to go to work, even though that takes a little longer than the freeways. And Santa Barbara is an incredibly beautiful town.
That sounds beautiful. Yeah, musicians, people might not know that. Even when you have a full-time gig, you're still road warrioring. Like, you've subbed with other major orchestras. You've even gone on international tour, right? With other orchestras?
Yeah. I went to Europe with the National Symphony last year, and I went to Europe with the Cleveland Orchestra 20 years ago. Every time it's a lot of fun. It's just a joy to be playing in all these international concert halls, these really world-renowned international concert halls, Berlin and Hamburg and La Scala in Milan, for example. But also, the audiences in Europe really appreciate hearing American orchestras because it's different. It's a different interpretation. It's a different sound, and people really show up for it. It's really a wonderful time. But I've played with the National Symphony, Cleveland Orchestra, Houston, Utah, San Diego, LA, Seattle, Minnesota. I'm sure many others that I'm leaving out just because I can't name them all off the top of my head.
Right. Well, it's an incredible network to be part of. This is one of the things that, again, I just so value the perspectives that musicians bring to Baltimore when you're living here full time, but you have this whole world of experiences that you're bringing to and contributing to the city. And so I'm so glad that you've been able to share a little bit of that with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. If you come up with any more salacious stories, hopefully ones that are maybe less cringe. Well, let me know.
Well, look, I mean, there are a lot of fun stories that are less cringe and they're just as much fun to tell. But the story of Symphonie Fantastique is so interesting. It's kind of like watching a car crash in slow motion. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's endured for so long and why it's still so popular. It's a story that just goes completely off the rails. And to some extent, it really gets to the heart of the human experience. This, somebody who's very anxious and uses their imagination to imagine themselves becoming a murderer and then being killed and then, going to hell. There's nothing like it. And it's a thrill to play it every single time.
Well, the timing kind of reminds me of Poe here in Baltimore.
Yes.
And the aesthetic is similar in my mind, when I think about how that music feels and how it makes me feel, and the way that some of the macabre stories that we have from Poe's collection there's some alignment there. And I think it's just so indicative of the time period, which makes it really fun to make those connections. So I do have to say, this is going to be part of our Poe concert. It's being paired with the piece Israfel, which is a really macabre story. I think it's pretty dark. So we'll get lots of that in the concert that's happening during Poe Fest. And there will also be a time to center stories and encourage people to get involved with reading and storytelling later on. And actually, it's early on in the season, but it's later on in the month of October. So thank you so much. Like I said, future stories, we want to hear them. They could be about this or anything else related to music listening. That's what the point is of the Sympiphany podcast. So, Aubrey, as we close up this conversation, if you could point our listeners toward one stop on their own musical journeys, a piece or a place, or even a person to check out that's inspiring you right now, what would that be?
Yeah. So we're doing a set of concerts later this season with our music director, Jonathan Hayward. We're playing a symphony that very rarely gets played. It's Shostakovich's Fourth Symphony. And what's really great about it was that this was a piece that Shostakovich wrote when he still felt musically free enough to express himself fully. After the premiere of the Fourth Symphony, an editorial was written in the Russian newspaper Pravda. And remember, this was during the 1930s, a very, very totalitarian time in Russian history, and indeed sort of the height of the Soviet Union. And it's rumored that Stalin himself wrote this editorial, basically declaring that the opera that Shostakovich had written, Lady Macbeth of the Mtsensk district, was bourgeoisie trash. It was something that was culturally just very high, and it's not made for the common person, and therefore nobody should listen to it. And that was basically the shot across the bow that Shostakovich felt. And he lived the rest of his life in the Soviet Union with suitcases under his bed. So if the secret police ever came for him, he could gather his suitcases with his wife and flee out the back door. But this piece that we're playing was the last piece that he wrote. They premiered Lady Macbeth of the Mtsensk district, and the Fourth Symphony was set to be premiered, and it was withdrawn. It was later premiered in, I believe, the 70s, but it was never played in Soviet Russia during Stalin's time. But it's a really amazing, sonically massive, glorious, just compelling work of art. And most people are not going to be familiar with it, but anybody who's listening to this, I strongly encourage you to come and hear it. You will hear nothing like it for a very long time.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's important that we're playing music that has those stories behind it, especially now. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will put it on my calendar. It was already on my calendar, but yes, thank you again for sharing.
There are 2 tubas.
Oh, wow. So so it sounds like a big sound that people can tune into and be part of.
It is the year of 2 tubas. It's Symphonie Fantastique is 2, and we've got 2 weeks of 2 tubas because we're carrying Fantastique into the kiddie shows and the Pops Week the following week.
Nice.
And then we're doing...
Yes, it's going to get spooky over here.
Heck yeah. And we're going to do 2 tubas on Shostakovich 4th, and then we're doing 2 tubas on Rite of Spring.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, we will look forward to that from you, Aubrey. Thank you again so much for being here. It's been great to talk to you today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Great to talk to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Aubrey, for such an entertaining discussion that is definitely going to be adding a little bit of color to those of us who are listening to Symphonie Fantastique this weekend at the Baltimore Symphony. The conversation on this podcast continues with our next episode, which features Maya Bilal from Cadetta Bakery. Our question is going to be, if you could set one of your memories to a movie score, which moment and which movie would you choose? To answer, visit bsomusic.org/podcast, and you may even be featured on a future episode. Everyone's welcome, and it does not have to be about classical music. We hope to hear from you. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. This episode was edited and produced by Ayal Subar, and Danielle Quigley was a contributing producer. It was written by myself, Jennifer Barton. The design team is Lawrence Medley and Maya Lee. Our theme music was composed by Kevin Putz and performed by the BSO. As always, we hope to see you at the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra's concerts at the Joseph Meyerhoff Symphony Hall in Baltimore and the Music Center at Strathmore in North Bethesda. Thanks again for tuning in, and stay curious.